Hello, everybody. I'm Erin Parks, and I am here today with Teamwork Bloomington and Teamwork Indiana to do a series of videos as well as transcribed blogs, which you'll be able to see to discuss different philosophical theories that we have when it comes to sports performance, athleticism, mental competitiveness, really anything that lends itself to us thinking about physical preparation for a sport. And what we do here at Teamwork Bloomington and Teamwork Indiana to make our athletes better, stronger, all the things which just make them different when you see them on the court or the field. Today, we're going to go big, we're going to go universal, and we're going to theoretically discuss our different versions of what sports performance is. This is a word that is thrown around. It sounds awesome, right? Sports performance, performing in your sport, but what exactly does that mean to strength and conditioning coaches, especially when you're working with young developing athletes? So you'll hear all of our different versions. We're all strength coaches. We've worked with thousands of athletes of all different levels and all different ages, and what it means for us when we are approaching our training sessions, programming, relationships with athletes as they prepare for their sport. So the question is, what is sports performance? And I need to introduce my colleagues here. Seth, you can say
Thank you.
yes.
Hi, I'm Seth. I'm the head strength coach here in Bloomington. I've been here 5 years now.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
It's a long time.
I'm Rod Root, and I'm owner here with Erin Parks, and yeah, we've been here for a while. We've been here since day one. Excited to kind of share with you how our philosophy has evolved and how we think about our jobs and what we do for these athletes.
Yeah, and I think like what we've been able to learn over these past, we've been in business for 7 years here in Bloomington, and then we also have a facility in Linton, Indiana. It's just we've evolved when it comes to learning about what young athletes need, and we all have different versions of how we go about doing that, but those different mindsets, those different philosophies are comprehensive, so we can put it all together and really create a strong and bulletproof athlete, which is what you want in my version of sports performance, what you want to see from your athlete at any level. So I'm going to just start with my version of what sports performance is, and you guys can like interject if you agree, if you disagree with any of this. We will do this as a series, so as we get better at talking, but also as we get better at communicating what we think sports performance is, we want to share that evolution with you. So for myself, as a coach, that I came from a background of just being an educator, a teacher, and a communicator. And when I came to sports performance, I was very intuitive with my own understanding of internally what I needed to do to be stronger, what I needed to do to maintain my skills as just an athlete. And so when I think about sports performance, I think about what it does for the athlete internally, so mentally, and also what it does for the athlete when it comes to performing in their sport towards the end of their competition. So I don't necessarily think just like, oh, we're preparing the athlete for a game. I'm thinking we're preparing the athlete for the end of their season when everybody else is tired, broken, doesn't want to do anything. I'm preparing the leader. Who's going to step up? Who's going to set the tone athletically, as in conditioning, as in acuity when you're in fatigue, like mental acuity when you're in fatigue, the ability to dig in and know, like, I've done this before. I've practiced really tough stuff before in the weight room, and I know that I'm not lifting 200 pounds right now. I'm actually just fighting my mentalness saying that my heart's not going to work. And so that's what I think about when I think of sports performance, is the end of a season, my athletes still shining, my athletes still being able to make decisions and physically maintaining themselves when they are at their most exhausted. So So I will pass it on to Seth. What he could disagree with me. It's okay. We won't fight today. I don't think so.
No, I think all of that is true, and you want a mental edge in what you do. That resilience at the end of the season, I think, comes from a little bit more of what I look at, which all of this is incorporated in every session, right? But some of the things that I think of are more technical. And when I say technical, probably the easiest and lowest hanging fruit for a new kid is teaching them movements, how to move correctly, and getting them as strong as possible relative to their body weight. So no matter the sport, whether you look at basketball, pretty much any kind of track and field athlete, from a sprinter to a thrower, even like a defensive lineman, a defensive end, these body types are drastically different, but the best ones, time and time again, are going to be incredibly strong for their weight.
I think that's so important, because I think there's misnomers about what sports performance is, which generally goes to powerlifting, it goes to CrossFit, and these are sports. These are sports of weight training. This is preparation for the athlete specifically, at least in our weight room. So it's not like how hard you can hit the weights heavily, how much who's lifting the most, but it's excellence, but also speed. So the relativeness of the weight is really important.
Yeah, so many studies have shown at this point in time that by the time you hit maybe a roughly double your body weight trap bar deadlift, which very closely emulates like a jumping pattern, you're looking at diminishing returns after that. And it's actually not super hard to get to a double body weight deadlift, assuming you're training consistently for the course of a year or so, maybe 2. But once you've hit that point, you really should be looking at the rate that you produce the force. It's how quickly can you get that bar off the floor, and can you do it well?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, people talk to us a lot about soreness, and they talk about like, oh, I don't want to do too much. And we keep this in mind. Like, there is a thing called work capacity, and we do want to work that, but there are smart and safe ways to do it, and it's not just about like your maximum effort lift. We do that rarely ever, and it always is technical, but it's also like not worth the time. You're in here maybe for an hour, 2 hours a week tops, which sometimes people get in their brain like, oh, that's just too much. But we can change an athlete in 2 hours a week essentially, and we don't have to do it with maximum effort lifts. So
yeah. Well, go ahead, finish. Keep going.
Oh, just to carry on top of that, one of the other most important things in my opinion is having control through long ranges of motion. So an early mentor of mine would always say that our goal is to accentuate the sport, not to replicate the sport. So just because your defensive stance is maybe a little above a squat position does not mean you shouldn't be able to sit down on your heels, maybe unweighted, but you should possess that ability. I even think of like Odell Beckham went down in the Super Bowl this past weekend, and granted, there's injury history and whatnot, but I think you could make the argument that if his hamstrings were stronger, if he possessed the ability to push his knee farther over his toe, he may not have torn his ACL. So, yeah.
What about Burrow? What's his excuse?
Who?
Joe Burrow.
Oh,
maybe if he had an offensive line.
Yeah, right. Yeah, can't prevent a
I don't know what's
300-pound guy laying on you.
So I mean, both of them made excellent points, and I agree with both of them. I think, to me, when I think about sports performance, I think about what I would tell someone when they say, "Oh, you own a gym? What do you guys do?" And I'll say, "Oh, we primarily work with athletes." Like, "Oh yeah," like the answer is, "What do you do? Like CrossFit?" That's what almost 90% of the time. That's why I'm like, "Oh, not exactly." And
there's nothing wrong with CrossFit.
Yeah, CrossFit's awesome.
There's nothing wrong. We're not saying that.
Yeah, it's not bad.
We just don't do it here.
Yes. Yeah. And that's just what people's minds go to is like you said, powerlifting. Like you think of the bigger, faster, stronger, like the big football guys, in the squat racks in the high school weight room, and nothing wrong with that either. You do have to be strong in football, but that's just not the whole. It's not the whole story, right? When I think about sports performance, I think, what does it take? How do I help you be better at your job? If talking about your job as an athlete, what can I do to help you be better at your job? And that comes from training. That comes from putting in the time, learning. It comes from learning how to move. So not only are you getting the benefits in here when you're training in your sessions with us, you go to the high school weight room, you've got the pattern downloaded. You're not learning on the job like everyone else. You know exactly what you're doing. It looks good, and this makes not only your life easier as an athlete, it makes the strength coach's job, if assuming there is one. Sometimes there's not. It makes the sport coach's job easier, and that's kind of what I want to make you better at your job, so it makes everyone's life better. Being what if you talk to a parent, what can I do? What can my son or daughter do to play more? And they really want to play more. And it's be better. Make it hard to not play you. And training in sports performance is a great way to do that. You can't, if you're the fastest kid on the team, or even just faster than you are today, that's going to help you. If you can move better laterally, if you have a better change of direction, if you can, all those things, if you can jump higher, all those things help you. And that's exactly what we do. And we measure those things through our testing protocols, just to make sure that we're doing our job and helping you be better at your job. And and basically we're just physically preparing you for the demands of your sport. If someone was in a sales job and I sat down with them and they were terrible at communicating, they didn't make eye contact, they I don't know, maybe they didn't speak English very well and they were dealing with English speaking customers, like those would be things we would need to work on, right? And if someone walks in the door here, maybe they are strong, maybe they have a good vertical jump, but they can't move laterally, and they play basketball, and they're just getting roasted, off the ball. They can't guard anyone. Teams are scouting them and attacking this player, so that's something we need to work on. So again, going back to being better at your job.
Can you expand a little bit? Because we say it in the fitness industry all the time, and we think, oh, this is the best thing. What does it mean to move well?
I think it means you are not wasting energy. You're able to use the strength and the speed and the power you have, and to move fluidly and react to your game without wasted energy.
Yeah, and to me, I think of like your body functioning as it's supposed to. Like it's moving in the movement pattern it's supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you need a coach on the outside to see what you do, because it's actually like you don't know what your body does once it's compensated. It's like, I'm doing excellent things, and some of the best athletes I've ever seen, like when they get in the weight room, their body has adapted so well to their sport that lifting is really hard. Like it's difficult for them to not do certain patterns that are great for the sport but not great for longevity of their body. And you don't want to be injured your entire career. So like when you hear us say like, oh, move well, that's like the foundation of what we're trying to accomplish.
Absolutely.
Is like, yes, it's going to be awesome for you when you get to a high school weight room, or as an adult after you've done sports and you want to lift weights and you have this skill developed, or you want to go into sport professionally, like as a young person, and you're interested in this, communicating, learning the cues in which, like internally or from a coach that cares about you. That's the special sauce, is doing it really well, impeccably. The lifting. So
that's number one on my list too. If I'm working with anyone, it needs to be, no matter what the exercise is, it needs to be clean. It needs to be perfect. And there are certain places where you can waver a little bit on what perfect is, but 95% of the time, if we're moving in a weight room setting, whether it's just jumping or if it's moving big weights, it needs to be clean, needs to be perfect. Or a big part of my philosophy is we want to train the muscles and the joints that we intend to. And if we start these compensatory patterns that sometimes we see when kids don't have that coaching, they don't have someone watching them and saying, hey, like, let's not do that, or maybe that's too heavy, or do this, try this for me and see how that feels, then that's when we start loading the tissues we don't intend to load, and that's when we get our low back stuff, that's when we get our our knee stuff going on, and we get pains that show up over time. And if we keep doing that over and over and over, we're loading the joints, we're loading the wrong joints, then that's when sometimes some weight room injuries can happen. And then fast forward and someone says, oh man, weightlifting hurts my back. Well, no, it's not weightlifting that doesn't hurt your back, it's how you've done it for all this time and you haven't addressed the issues.
Well, and in your sport, your body isn't doing necessarily functional things. You're
right.
So you want your joints to be as healthy as possible.
Yeah.
And that's why it needs to be really good, the lifting. And while there is space for understanding that in a safe environment where a coach is watching you, we can know what's okay and what's like, nah, that's bad. No, we can't do that. And there is like a bad. In
Yeah.
many things in life, there's not bad, but in the weight room, like, and you're throwing heavy things around, there are bad things that you can do, and that really will hurt you. And so we don't want that.
Yeah, we don't take that lightly.
We don't want that at all.
And I think one thing too, like if you studies have proven, and the average weight room is going to be far less safe than the weight room I'm coaching, if I can help it, right?
Yeah.
But even in your generic study, badminton has been proven to be more injurious than a day in the weight room.
Oh, sure.
So it goes to show that the positions you're hitting when you're on the court or on the field are going to be drastically more challenging than anything a supervised eye is going to give you. And then also one thing that I would add to the perfect technique is something that drives me insane is there real intent behind what they're doing?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because that's where you actually get carryover into the speed that you're moving on the court,
Yeah.
if anything. And if there's going to be a point where the wheels fall off, it's going to happen when you're going fast.
Yeah.
So while we're in here, we might not do 1 billion reps, but the 10 that we do need to be very intense and with good intentions.
I love that.
Absolutely. And I think like that's what people really think of when they think of sports performance is speed training or agility training. And then they go into, well, we should be doing ladders or we should be doing drills. And there are places for drills and ladders when you are a precise, powerful athlete. And there are some times where it's just kind of fun to do.
Yeah.
But in general, like, you are working on body mechanics if you have not been in the weight room for years, not like a year, like years. And there are some freaks that come through and it's like, wow, like that is just the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like the foot precision and on the cut is just gorgeous. The 9-year-old's not going to have that. Like, they're just not. And if it is, it's not very powerful. And so it might be looking good now when you're up against 9-year-olds. When you get to high school and you're competing against an 18-year-old and you're 15, like that foot position, like age starts to factor into things. And so we do drills that are fun, but we're driving decision-making patterns. We work on mechanics in real time, not on breaking it down as much, unless the athlete's like really developed or really strong. And Seth, like, he does a lot more speed training than I do. But when I'm talking to a parent, especially of a younger athlete, probably under high school, anyone under high school, and they're like, well, do you do drills? Like, well, I need to see your athlete move. Because it's highly likely they just need to really get good at squats and split squats and get some upper body strength, and all of a sudden they're going to become faster and in control of their body. And it's not going to be floppy when they try to stop. But I could be. Yeah.
I mean, if I had a nickel for every football player we came in that couldn't stand balanced in a split stance, like a lunge stance, let alone load it. I mean, the first 3 weeks they're here are us just trying to get them not to fall over.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually, you know, some of our top guys, I've seen a 200-pound guy split squat 600 and do it beautifully. But that's an accumulation of years and years, right?
For sure. So it's developmental, and we will talk about that later. Like, we could go on forever, but I think what we wanted to accomplish today was to help anyone who's interested in our business, or even people who are inside of our business who might not know exactly what's taking place, that sports performance is developmental, it's care, it's precision. It's not just lifting weights. Like, that's probably the least, the worst way to talk about what we do. And it's more than just speed drills or doing agility drills or something like that, but we're really seeing the athlete for thinking about them long term, that we want to see them be the best athlete on the court. Like, that is what we hope. We're not in it, like, we can't get the W. We want to. Maybe if we have teams, we can be a little more invested. But we want the athlete to feel confident, be strong, look like the freak that they are working to be, and do that every single time an athlete comes through a teamwork gym. So that is today. Thank you so much for your attention, and look for another video coming out soon.